County 911.
Honey, I need a needle in the bathroom. They're swelled, they're black and blue. They should be.
Okay, do you want to attempt to do CPR?
They're both dead. It's too late.
Hello everyone, Arya here again, and as before, I am here to cover crimes that took place on the internet as I explore the question, are the worst monsters no longer hiding in the dark, but out here in the light? A social media feud that turned into a coldly executed double murder. This is the case of Janelle Potter, the murderous catfish behind the infamous Facebook murders. This is a wild story, so strap yourselves in. While growing up, Janelle Potter always had trouble making friends. Even Janelle's parents themselves would acknowledge how different she was. According to Janelle's estranged sister, Christy Groover, Janelle was coddled by their parents. Having watched Janelle deceive and manipulate others in the past, she was very aware of what her sister was capable of. And after Janelle Potter moved to Mountain City, Tennessee in 2004, that small town would eventually come to learn exactly what Janelle was capable of. In Janelle's own words, the people of Mountain City do not like outsiders, which definitely did not make it seem like the ideal place for someone that already had trouble making friends. Janelle also had a slew of health problems, which included type 1 diabetes, and spent most of her time living at home with her parents, Barbara and Melvin Buddy Potter, who took care of her. Further limiting her ability to meet people, Janelle did not have a job or drive a car. So, as many often have, Janelle turned to the internet, and in many ways, social media would become her life support. One of the things I want to make clear about these cases that we're covering is that I don't want to completely malign the internet and label it this horrible place. I mean, obviously the internet is a great place in many ways, and it has provided a safe haven for many people who perhaps don't have the means to make friends. However, I do believe that there's a very blurry and fine line that's easy to cross where the internet becomes much more than just a safe place and it becomes kind of a crutch in your life. In 2004, while picking up prescriptions one day, Janelle became friends with pharmacy clerk Tracy Greenwell. The two would begin to chat on the phone often, and Tracy would soon try to invite Janelle on several outings. Oddly though, before Janelle was allowed to go anywhere with her, Tracy was required to visit the Potter house a couple of times in order for Janelle's parents to get to know her. Eventually, Janelle would come to spend more time with Tracy and Tracy's own family, including her brother, Billy Payne. He's going to be important. According to Tracy, everybody would say that Janelle had fallen in love with Billy. However, despite Janelle's feelings for Billy, he was already in a relationship with a woman named Billie Jean Hayworth, with whom he not only shared a home, but an infant son. It was around this same time that Janelle also met Jamie Curd, Tracy and Billy's cousin. And with a potential romance with Billy not looking like it was on the cards, Jamie and Janelle began dating. You can't get one, get the cousin. However, due to her parents' strictness, Janelle would be forced to hide this new relationship from them. Since Jamie was handy with computers, he could come to Janelle's home to fix the family's computer, but any other time the two spent together was hidden from her disapproving parents. This is where things start to get a little wild. Around this time, Janelle reportedly began being relentlessly bullied and harassed with anonymous comments on her Facebook page. These comments included threats of being raped, according to Janelle. Janelle's parents, who, it's worth noting by the way, would regularly monitor her Facebook, tried to put an end to the bullying, begging them to stop. But who is them? Well, in a stunning turn of events, Janelle would go on to accuse Billie Jean Hayworth, the girlfriend of Tracy's brother Billy Payne. The reason for this abuse? According to Janelle, it was because Billie Jean was jealous of her looks. The online abuse would then continue. However, this time, the targets were different. Because around this same time, Billie Jean, and even some of their friends were the recipients of negative comments on Facebook and a Topics website page for Mountain City. The first commenter was named Matt Potter, whose post called Hayworth and two of her friends no good whores, and accused them of selling drugs. Then a user named Kelly posted support of Matt Potter's posts, adding that one of the women had HIV. Conversely though, Matt would defend Janelle, calling her a sweet person. Matt would then escalate his threats, saying he'd release phone numbers if they don't stop bugging Janelle, and then all kinds of people will be calling them. I have sales to home phone numbers, and fucking Billie Jean is getting so fat with that baby, she looks like a chipmunk that's eating too many nuts. Laugh out loud. I hope she loses that baby in time. Leave Janelle alone. For her part, Janelle did little else but try and stoke the flames of this drama, as she claimed that there were real threats of violence against her, including one incident in which a rock was found in her family's front yard with the names Billy Payne and Billie Jean written on it. Because of course, if you're going to commit an act of vandalism, make sure you sign off on it so people know, so you get the credit. According to a friend of Billy and Billie Jean, Janelle said that she wished that Bill and Billie Jean and that damn baby would die. Tracy would try and go on to defend her brother, messaging Janelle on Facebook, "Your friend Matt needs to leave Billie Jean off of the topic's website. You lost my brother as a friend, and I'm not happy with you either." Janelle simply claimed she did not know who Matt was and that this is not my fault. If you hate me, then I don't care. By this point, a public feud had erupted on Facebook. We do love those. Which involved Janelle's boyfriend, Jamie Curd, who took Janelle's side against his own family. Eventually, everyone unfriended each other on Facebook. But soon after, all of this madness would spill into the real world in a very real way. At 6:30 a.m. on January 31st, 2012, Brad Osborne arrived at the home of his co-worker, Billy Payne, which he shared with Billie Jean Hayworth, their infant son, and Billy's father, Pa Bill. Brad and Billy would often carpool together in the mornings, and by the time Brad arrived that day, Billy's father had already left for work. When Billy didn't come outside, Brad would leave for work after several unsuccessful attempts to reach Billy on the phone. At 10 a.m., former neighbor Roy Stevens came by to collect mail that Billy and Billie Jean would hold for him in their living room. He noticed that both of their cars were there, so he knocked before entering the home through a sliding glass door. He shouted for the couple, but got no response. Roy went down the hallway and came upon the first bedroom, in which he saw a bed, with Billy laying on top of it on his back. Roy ran outside to get his wife, Linda, who was sitting in the car, to call 911. Knowing CPR, she rushed inside to see if she could provide assistance. According to her, Billy was very stiff and ice cold. Linda realized that Billy's neck had been slashed when she attempted to find a pulse, while his face appeared beaten. As Linda called 911, Roy then heard something in the second bedroom. There he found Billie Jean on the floor with their infant son in her arms, asleep and seemingly unharmed. Billie Jean, on the other hand, had a hole in her head and was not breathing. Her blood was in a pool around her head. An autopsy of the bodies would later show that Billy and Billie Jean were both shot in the head in very cold and calculated homicides. But what had actually happened to Billy Payne and Billie Jean Hayworth? What were the events that took place which led to a baby being left the sole survivor of a brutal double homicide? Let's go back a little bit. And let me introduce you to Janelle's friend, Chris. Janelle would often tell her boyfriend Jamie about her good friend, Chris, who she described as a family friend that she met in school and viewed like a brother. According to the stories Janelle would tell Jamie, Chris worked for the CIA and lived between Pennsylvania and Tennessee. Chris began messaging Jamie over text. While Janelle would air her complaints to Jamie about all the harassment she was receiving on topics, Chris would do the same, telling Jamie about his work with the CIA and keeping him up to date on the apparent online abuse against Janelle. On November 21st, 2011, Janelle added a Chris Potter as her brother on Facebook, with Chris posing in various pictures featuring his friends and his dog. From Janelle's own account, Chris began posting threats to Billy, Billie Jean, and their friends. As you do, on someone else's account. Meanwhile, Chris was continuing his own budding online relationship with Jamie, along with starting to communicate with Janelle's parents, Barbara and Marvin Buddy Potter. In Chris's communication with the Potters, he would tell them about his work with the CIA, as Chris would go on to explain to Barbara, "I got to a point where they were bad people and I knew it was us or them, so I had to kill. But I love to shoot now, and killing does not bother me at all." Chris would also explain how he was seeing all the abuse against Janelle on topics, but that he took care of it and was getting everything removed from the site, being sure to mention that he had so much on them all. The Potters, ever protective of their daughter, were relieved to hear of the support that Janelle was receiving from Chris, with Barbara writing to him, "We have no way to fight back. Billie Jean started for some crazy reason because they saw Janelle out and got jealous of her looks." Chris continued to say all the right things to the Potters, even going as far as to offer Janelle's father, Buddy, a former Marine, a potential job with the CIA. Barbara would go on to highlight how great of a fit her husband would be for the job, describing him as a sharpshooter and sniper. I do give her props for being a very supportive partner. Anyways, it was pointless though, because despite Chris's assurances that the job was right in the offing, for some reason, the job just never seemed to materialize. With Barbara's frustration growing over all the supposed harassment, she would write to Chris that she was not strong enough to fight back yet, but I will be at some point. Bud is angry, along with giving Chris her permission to shoot any of them. Buddy is so mad, and I'm 100% behind whatever happens. Chris would rile Barbara up even more as he expressed concern about Janelle's well-being and very plainly stated that he will kill them. But before he could do that, Chris was actually going to be in Philadelphia for an assignment. Terrible timing. And as for Jamie Curd, the boyfriend that Janelle originally kept a secret from her parents was actually beginning to make inroads with them, with Barbara even expressing to Chris about how they were beginning to warm to him. All the while, Chris was also continuing to message back and forth with Jamie, painting a picture of how much of an emotional toll this was all taking on Janelle, saying, "No one should have to live like this." Jamie would write back, "No, they shouldn't, and definitely not her. She is too good of a girl to have to put up with this shit. And man, words can't start to say how much I love her." I actually don't know what a Tennessee accent sounds like. I'm just gonna roll with it. On October 27, 2011, just a few months before the double homicide that would rock the town of Mountain City, Chris writes to Jamie, "With you and Buddy, I hope you all can get them. I hope it all works out great. I hope that you will pray about it and Buddy is, and that you know what you are all doing is great. Wish I could kill them, but right now, I really can't." Poor guy's just slammed with all these assignments the CIA is giving him. Very stressful job. Shout out to him. As Jamie's relationship with the Potters began to grow, things quickly evolved into a three-way line of communication, with Jamie and Barbara now beginning to exchange messages about the situation, as they shared their frustration over the treatment Janelle was receiving. Barbara would even go as far as to tell Jamie, "If you text with Chris, ask him if he thinks the CIA will back up Buddy if he takes it into his own hands." To assuage Barbara's concerns, Chris would then go on to ask her to please tell J and B it's okay, and we have their backs and to just make you and Janelle safe. To which Barbara would go on to proclaim, "Anyone who wants to mess with Janelle or with us is asking to die." So to go back to my earlier question, what had actually happened to Billie Payne and Billie Jean Hayworth? On January 30th, 2012, Jamie went over to the Potters after being invited by Barbara to fix their family computer. When alone in the computer room, Buddy approached him asking for a favor. He asked Jamie to drop him off at the home of Billie and Billie Jean and go down the road before coming back to pick him up, all at a yet-to-be-disclosed time. After Jamie returned home that night, Jamie would receive a text from Janelle which simply read, "I would not take your cell phone with you in the morning, love." Early the next morning, Buddy called in that favor. Driving in Buddy's truck, the two men pulled over in a church parking lot near Billie and Billie Jean's house while still under the cover of darkness. There they waited until they saw Billie's father head off for work. Once they knew he was gone, the pair crossed a field on foot that led to the house. They made their way to the home, stopping behind a shed at the back of the home where Buddy handed Jamie a gun. Jamie replied saying that he couldn't kill anybody, but Buddy just told him to stand by the door. Creeping to the sliding glass door at the back of the home, they entered, with Jamie standing by the door as Buddy made his way through the house. As he entered the first bedroom, Jamie could hear Billie's bewilderment at Buddy being in his home, saying, "What the hell?" Billie Jean then ran from the room down the hallway. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. Buddy re-emerged, looking to Jamie, who pointed, indicating where Billie Jean had fled to. Buddy followed. And as a second gunshot rang out, Jamie bolted back to Buddy's truck in the church parking lot, where he waited for Buddy. Upon his return, Jamie gave Buddy his gun, and the two made their way back to Jamie's home, where Jamie proceeded to throw up as the reality of what just transpired sunk in. As the investigation into the murders began following the discovery of the bodies by Roy Stevens, Chief Deputy Woodard and Special Agent Scott Lott of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation began looking into the Potters. In their interview with the family, Buddy, Barbara, and Janelle all denied knowing anything about the murders beyond what had been shown on television. Janelle wouldn't forget, however, to tell the investigators that Billy and Billie Jean had been harassing the living crap out of her. When the investigators asked about the motive for why they would be harassing her, she told them it came out to be a jealousy thing. They said I was too pretty, that I wasn't from here, so I was never going to be accepted. Within a week, a big break in the case occurred during Jamie's second interview, in which she admitted that not only was he in the home at the time of the murder, but that he had seen Buddy shoot them. During his polygraph test, Jamie questioned Agent Lott if the CIA was there, making Lott suspicious, as the CIA had never been involved with the case. Jamie eventually explained that he had asked the question out of the hope that Chris and the CIA had his back, as Chris had promised many times before. From there, investigators procured search warrants for the Potters' home. While they were searching the house, Barbara attempted to rip apart a stack of papers consisting of emails related to Janelle, Lindsay Thomas, a friend of Billy's, and Billy herself. I'm sorry, but that's such ridiculous image in my head. You got these cops all searching through the house, and you have Barbara just frantically trying to rip something apart. After Buddy was arrested, he placed a recorded call to Barbara in which he admitted to her that he did it because of what they had done to Janelle and that he didn't want her, Barbara, to be afraid no more. Eventually, the police uncovered a series of hundreds of emails and messages from 2011 to 2012 from Barbara, Jamie, Janelle, and the mysterious Chris. In court, investigators and language specialists would later testify that comparisons between Janelle's writing samples and the emails confirmed it was the same person. Plot twist? Not really. More damningly, though, was that all of the emails from Chris had come directly from Janelle's email. Yes, every single email from Chris that Barbara and Jamie would reply to was coming from Janelle's own personal email. She didn't even create a new email account. Jamie was under the impression that Chris did not have his own email because he had a phobia of phones. Jamie also said that when he received an email from Chris from Janelle's account, he could tell it was Chris because he used words that Janelle did not, such as starting emails by saying, "Hey man," or "Hey dude, how's it going?" Typical guy chat, you know how it is. And it gets even crazier. In a Facebook message from April 27, 2011, Barbara even wished Chris a happy birthday, saying, "It's amazing that you and Janelle were born on the same day, same year, 1 minute apart, and at the same hospital. You're the same age too. Isn't that quite a coincidence?" In October 2013, Janelle's father, Marvin Potter, was convicted of the murders and was sentenced to serve 2 consecutive life sentences. In May 2015, Janelle and Barbara were convicted of planning the murders of Billy and Billie Jean, for which they were each given a life sentence. Barbara was also convicted of tampering with evidence, because of the incident where she was ripping up documents with the police in the house at the same time. Which, it resulted in an additional 3-year sentence on top of her life sentence. Because why not? At that point, may as well just keep throwing on years. In July 2015, Jamie Curd was charged but testified against Janelle and Barbara as a part of a plea bargain with the state. He ultimately pled guilty to facilitation to commit murder in the first degree and was sentenced to 25 years in prison with a chance of parole after he had served 30% of his time. By the time of the trial, he had realized that Chris had never been real. At least he eventually realized it. And testified that the Potters had manipulated him, saying, "Well, I thought Chris was real. I thought that there was someone that I was talking to there, and Janelle, the way she would talk to me, it was like a bonding, a family. It's all a lie." But who was the actual Chris in the pictures? Well, during the investigation, other emails were found in which Janelle referenced a Chris Tehayden. Investigators located a Christopher Tehayden working as a certified constable in Wilmington, Delaware. He had never been in the CIA. They learned through interviews with Tehayden that he and Janelle had gone to the same high school, but they had only ever had 2 classes together and only occasionally spoke. When they showed pictures that had been sent from Janelle's email account to herself, he recognized them as his own Facebook pictures. Tehayden remembered Janelle as being very strange, and stated that he had not seen her since their high school graduation in 2000, nor had he ever had any correspondence with her parents or Jamie. Ultimately, I think the best way to sum it up is the same way that Judge John Kerry Blackwood did, as he described the crime and the case as the most bizarre thing he's seen in his entire career. Oh boy, that was certainly a wild one. And I think the wild nature of the case sometimes makes it easy to laugh about some of the aspects of it, but obviously, honestly, the sad truth is that 2 people were murdered and a child was left without parents. Despite the quirkier nuances of this case, at its core, it's still just a harrowing example of how dark and horrible the internet can be in the hands of someone like Janelle Potter. So I return to the question I posed to you all at the start. Are the worst monsters no longer hiding in the dark, but out here in the light? Thank you for listening, everyone. As always, if there is an internet crime that you want me to explore with all of you, be sure to leave us a comment below or shoot me a message, and who knows, maybe next time the story being told is one that you've sent over. Until then, please take care, everyone, and stay safe online.